Hey everybody, Dave Braz here from Bear Hill Baits, and the boys over at Midwest Finesse asked me to do a video on this, and this is something that it's not new by any means, but it is something that originated over in Japan and has gotten increasingly popular over time. And when I'm talking about the leadered punch shot. VMC is coming out with something. They came out with something at ICAST. Basically, they're calling it the Tokyo rig. But for the most part, this is something that you could pretty much easily put together yourself with some pretty simple components. Now, I'll talk about the benefits and when and where and how to put this together and when and where and how to fish this. So a lot of people are familiar with basically something similar to this. Well, they'll have the three components: the hook, the split ring, and the swivel, and then they'll actually put a teardrop weight directly connecting to the split ring. Some people call it a Jika rig. I would look at it as a non-leadered punch shot. Very similar in terms of when it's used. The difference is we'll talk about the effectiveness of this wire leader here. But the components are pretty simple. We talked about a simple split ring. We're talking about a simple swivel. Right, your choice of hook. I'm using, this is the Mustad grip pin hook. I really like this hook, particularly with thicker plastics, and I mean bulkier plastics. But this keeper that it has on here, you'll notice that the keeper is pretty pronounced, which does a great job of not letting bait slide down the shaft of the hook. But what it also does is it's actually pointed and fairly sharp. So if you do hook into a fish and that fish is shaking pretty rigorously where that bait is going to start to slide down the shaft of the hook, it'll actually rip the bait so that the bait can tear away and not ball up on the shaft of your hook here. So it basically really ensures that while you're fighting a fish, that it's not going to be an issue or your bait is not going to be getting in the way. But this is the part here that I think that most people don't have just lingering around in their tackle box, and it's the wire. But it's actually pretty easy to find. If you go on eBay and you look for like looped inline spinner wire or spinnerbait wire, you'll actually get it with the loop already connected on there. Typically you can get 5-6 inches long. But here's the thing is, I like to add a little bobber stop to it, but then you can cut this to whatever desired length you want. So if you want a shorter leader, longer leader, whatever it is, but basically you could take your choice of weight, would be an egg weight, bullet weight, whatever you want. You could take that and go ahead and slide that on there, and you can take your pliers, cut the wire to your desired length, and just simply bend the wire. And what you end up with is something that looks a little like this. And I like showing this guy here because this one has been absolutely beat to hell. I've been using this one for, it's on its second hook now, but I've used it for a couple of months. Super effective. Get the little bullet weight added on there. And the two applications in which I would really use this are, number one, is punching, and number two is if any instance would you'd be throwing one of those swing arm jig heads. And we'll talk about punching first. I think punching, and I'm thinking, you know, heavy braid, 1 ounce weight or more. And what you have here is 1 ounce weight pegged, straight shank flipping hook. This is a Bear Hill Baits B17, very similar to a Missile Baits D-bomb. But the difference between the two here, we'll talk about this guy right here, is you see how bulky that weight is? The bulky weight sitting right on top of the bait does a couple of different things that negatively affect your ability to hook up and catch fish. And the first is, in a lot of areas where you have vegetation, a canopy overhead, you typically have some type of slime or something on the bottom as well. So, or even a soft bottom. So a lot of times you shake this thing, it gets through, and it buries itself in the bottom. So you find yourself shaking it, ticking the roof, trying to do stuff to get it up out of the mucky bottom and trying to get it into the strike zone as long as possible. But again, you're up and down, you're trying to keep it into the strike zone. And then let's say that this does get eaten. When a fish eats this, and they typically eat it on the fall, they grab the whole thing, right? So what you do is you set, and the first thing that comes out of their mouth is your 1 ounce tungsten weight. And for you, the old school guys talk about this quite a bit, right? Because back in the day when you used to have to use lead, when you use lead, it was almost like a trophy to have a lead weight, and it would have all the teeth marks and scrapes on it. And that was purely just because of you ripping this weight through the fish's mouth, which is busting that fish's mouth open a little bit. Which is also why you would go ahead and snell the hook. And the idea is that weight hits that hook, and it would pendulum that bait, and ideally that wide, that nice bite on that straight shank hook would, as that weight pumps the fish's mouth open, this would still come out at an angle, scrape the top of the fish's mouth, eventually catch, and that's how you'd end up getting them. One of the benefits to this bait here is, or this rig here is, we'll talk about the two benefits. One is, it's not going to get stuck in the bottom. So what's going to end up happening is this thing's going to hit the bottom, and your bait is still going to stay off of the bottom. So if there's a soft bottom, a mucky bottom, it's not getting buried in there. And the second part of this is that when a fish grabs it, they're not sucking in the whole thing. When a fish grabs it, they're sucking in from here, and they're not getting the weight at all. So when you set, it is just the hook that's coming out of that fish's mouth. And you're going to find that your hookup ratio on this is actually really good. So really two benefits to this over the traditional punching rig. The other technique that we typically look at this would be when you'd substitute it for one of those swinging jig or swing arm jigs. The thing is that it does two things for you. Once again, it keeps it off of the bottom, right? But the other thing is even the swing arm jigs that have like an integrated line tie, what's taking the beating as you're dragging that over rocks, over gravel? It's your knot, it's your line, is just constantly getting ticked, nicked, beaten, and battered. And the funny thing is that this here, all of the beating is taken on by the weight, which is like showing this guy. This guy is absolutely like been bent and rebent and straightened and quite a bit. But it just goes to the testament of I haven't lost it yet. It hasn't gotten hung up. It hasn't gotten caught on rocks. I mean, most of the time it's just a quick shake and you're getting that thing out of there. But I've thrown this in thick vegetation, heavy, large rock, small rock, you name it, and it's come out the other side clean. But definitely a lot of benefit to this guy here in terms of dragging it over the bottom. And for those who don't throw a swinging jig arm or a swing arm head, you basically throw typically your favorite beaver style bait. Again, we have the Bear Hill Baits B17 or the Missile Baits D-Bomb. You'd throw it out there, let it hit the bottom, and just slow wind it back, maintain bottom contact the whole time. I don't use it for this that much. I typically would throw a swim bait on a jig head more often than I would throw this, but I have and had done it with success. But for punching, I've had a ton of success with doing this, and I've done it with both. And once again, I get to use my EWG style hook, and my EWG style hook allows me to use some of the wider profile baits, such as a tube, such as a Biospawn Vile Craw, for example, and not just the little slender baits that you typically would see on a punching rig. One thing worth noting while you're rigging this up is you do not want to thread the bait on when you're first putting the hook into the bait. You do not want to thread it on very far. And I'll show you what I mean. Is we're going to go ahead and start to put this guy together, because I'm going to start pitching it around as soon as I finish this video. We're going to go ahead and have the blue side up. You don't want to put it on too far, and the idea is that you don't want it interfering. You want the eye of that hook to be able to slide freely from the split ring. So if you go ahead and thread it on too much, it's going to ball up on here and really not let it move around as freely as it should. So we'll go ahead and finish rigging this guy up. And there you have it. Pretty neat little rig. You can keep doing a straight shank if you want to. I really do like the wide gap hooks on these just because, like I said, I do like using wider profile baits at times. This bait has a phenomenal keeper. And again, you're not dealing with the nonsense of the typical punching rig where that weight's going to bust their mouth open, so you need that snelled, straight shank hook with a ton of bite to it. My hookup ratio on this is actually really, really good, rigged as is. So listen, I want to go ahead and post this online. You guys can go ahead and comment and have any questions down below. Thanks a lot for watching.